Hello and welcome to everyone that is catching this live. Welcome to the 11:11 hour live stream on Tuesday, the 9th of July. And if we're meeting for the first time, welcome. I'm Amanda and I'm co-hosting and interviewing the incredible Dr. Jeff Standridge from the US, who's very kindly joined us at a very early hour in the morning, coming live to us from Arkansas at about 5 a.m. So thank you so much, Jeff, for the early morning greeting and connection with our community. We're really excited to have you here.
It's my pleasure, Amanda. Thank you for having me. I'm an early riser anyway, maybe not quite so early, but I'm an early riser. So it wasn't too much of a stretch for me to get up here at this hour.
Glad that it wasn't too much of a stretch for you. It might be a bit early for a coffee, but then again, sometimes it's never too early for a coffee. Oh, there you go.
Got my coffee. No, it's never too early for a coffee. Sometimes it's too late for a coffee, but it's never too early for a coffee.
That is very true. And I know that our community, as in 11:11 hour, have been really looking forward to you joining us. We've got some questions to be asking. Those that are here live, pop your questions. Hey, Wilma, pop your questions in the comments and we will come to those as we go along. Probably be here for about an hour or so, depending on how it all goes and flows. And yeah, Jeff, we'd love to hear a bit more about you. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I have a long and storied past. I actually grew up in a really small town in the rural parts of Arkansas. So if your listeners not really sure geographically where Arkansas is located, we are a small state. We're about the size of the UK geographically. But where the UK has 70 million people, we have 3 million, maybe a little over 3 million. So a lot of land, a lot of mountains, rivers, lakes, and streams. It grew up in a very rural part, a small town of about 1,200 people, and went off to college about 2.5 hours away, which is the town that I live in now. I actually came here to go to college and have been here ever since. And spent probably, 10 or 12 years in the medical profession before completing a doctorate in leadership and organizational development. And so that led me out. I was a professor at the medical school while I was completing that doctorate. Was a paramedic, a street paramedic, and also a respiratory therapist. Spent 9 years on a helicopter team for Arkansas Children's Hospital as medical crew, and decided that I really wanted to get into the business world. And so as I completed that doctorate, ended up going to work for a publicly listed company. They were interested in the research I was doing, which was differentiating, determining the differentiators between highly successful people and average, marginally successful people. And they wanted me to come do some consulting. And so I ended up spending almost 20 years with that company, which took me all over the world doing mergers and acquisitions and running companies in 7 or 8 countries in Europe, China, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Brazil. So I made it on to 5 continents during that 20 years or so. And then about 8 years ago, I started an entrepreneurial support organization called The Conductor, which is focused on helping entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs and inventors and researchers to commercialize their ideas, grow their businesses, and that work is funded by sources that are interested in economic development and job creation. So the U.S. Small Business Administration, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. So all the work we do there on that side of our business is free for entrepreneurs in Arkansas below a certain size. And then we had a number of other companies coming to us over the years, wanting us to that didn't qualify for the free coaching, consulting, so we started Innovation Junkie to do work with those companies. And so we work with companies all over the world with Innovation Junkie. And that's what I do. That's where I spend most of my time today.
Oh, thank you so much. You've got such a broad lot of experience, but so deep as well. And I know when we were speaking before we came on live, we had some similar career paths as well. I'd also worked in healthcare and nursing for a good 15 years plus. But thank you so much for sharing,
Sure.
sharing that more with our listeners. And would love to know what inspired you to connect with
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's right. Before we dive into our topic, which is all about pretty much how to enter the US market, I would love to learn a little bit more about how you connected with the 11:11 hour and Cherry and Tab.
Yeah, so I had come across the 11 hour the 11:11 hour Facebook and podcast, and so I believe my assistant reached out to you guys, and we started a conversation, and from there it led to me getting up at the crack of dawn to be with you guys on the show this morning.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, and that's the beauty of collaborations and global markets and communities, is that you can connect with people across the globe. So, we're really excited that you're here, and it really fits in well with the 11:11 hour around collaborations and connections and networking. So thank you to your assistant. And it is so cool how you found us, Jeff, on the other side of the world. And you mentioned too that you're the founder of Innovation Junkie. Mm-hmm. So we'd love to hear a little bit more. And I know Dale's also got a question. Oh, he's a registered. Hey, Jeff, sorry I couldn't be around tonight. I'm a registered psychologist here in Australia, and I'm looking to develop online programs and workshops related to mental health. How and what would be the best way to advertise this for people in America? We can just dive straight into some questions if you're all right with that, Jeff.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, Dale, and sorry you couldn't be here tonight directly, but we'll take your question first off. Mental health is a real issue globally. I think it was an issue prior to the pandemic, and it's gotten worse, I think, since then. There's a lot of job burnout. There's a lot of career distress, not just with healthcare workers, but kind of across the board. And so I applaud you for the work that you're trying to do to drive improvements in mental health. In the U.S., you're talking about the best way to advertise those programs. I think there could be a variety of ways to do that. I know via the social media, and Amanda, you could probably even answer this better than I. But there are a number of Facebook groups and Facebook pages that have to do with mental health, and more and more in the social media, the ability to target people who have interests and who have likes or who have engaged with mental health related kinds of topics on social media is a haven for folks looking to I think target specifically. So my recommendation would be, explore the landscape, Facebook, Instagram, and maybe build a list, an inventory, so to speak. Whenever I talk to folks about direct selling to people, whether it's business to business or business to consumer, I have them create their dream list 100. These are the 100 customers that I would like to do business with. And then I start looking for ways, or encourage them to start looking for ways to connect with those folks, provide value to those folks, collaborate with those folks, with the idea that if you give something of value before you ask for anything in return, you're much more likely to build a long-lasting, mutually beneficial relationship. So I would create a dream list of all of those social media sites, is where I would start, that have to do with mental health, that have an interest in mental health. And I would start engaging with those sites to understand what kind of topics they're covering, what kind of people are engaged in those sites. And I would start contributing value to those sites, maybe become a top constructive voice on those sites, and then look for ways to leverage that audience from there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's really very practical and tangible. And like you said, it is very much a haven where you can go in and, like you said, add value first before asking. Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you so much. Another question from Dale. What is the National Disability Insurance Agency? So we've got a National Disability Insurance Agency here in Australia. is there an equivalent for people in America? So someone that has what's classified as a disability?
Yeah. We'll take that one first, and we'll go to the second one. So we do have one, and it is our Social Security program. So our Social Security program is really broken into two different types of Social Security. There's Social Security Disability Assistance, SSDA, that is for folks who have a registered confirmed disability and qualify for those financial services. And then there's Social Security Retirement Assistance, which is for folks as they reach retirement age. 62 is the minimum age at which you can start drawing Social Security. 67 is kind of an average age, which you reach full retirement. And then 70 is the age at which you begin to receive enhanced. And so if you choose to start receiving it at 62, you're going to receive less than the full amount for the entire time that you receive it. 67 the full amount, and 70 an enhanced amount. But Social Security Disability Assistance, SSDA, is the program and the agency that is the equivalent of your national NDIA.
Oh, thank you. And what avenues would you recommend, for example, Dale takes as a means to advertise these programs? So, yeah, and where would people most likely be looking who are trying to access these sorts of programs? I think by accessing those sorts of programs are available for people that are experiencing a disability.
Yeah. So I would probably follow the same advice that I would, look for those support groups, those social media groups that have like people. The key to marketing anything is to get very, very precise about who your ideal client is. Your ideal client profile, ICP, is what we call it. It gets called is unique client profile, ideal client profile, UCP, ICP. But figure out who that is. What are the characteristics of those folks? Excuse me. And then figure out ways to get in front of those folks. And then once you figure out ways to get in front of those folks, and I recommend creating a target list of those folks, or the target list of where those folks gather, for instance, such as social media pages and other ways. And then start looking at ways to get in front of them and add value to them, and take it from there.
Thank you. Yeah. Great answer for Dale. Yes, it is. Thank you so much for asking, Dale. I know you're not here live, but they're great questions, and incredible, practical, applicable strategies that you can implement as of today or when you listen to this episode. And while we're in question mode, for those that are just starting out and wanting to expand into the US market, so an Australian entrepreneur, what do you suggest firstly for a service-based business, and then for a product-based business? I know it's quite broad, but
so for a service-based business, I'd be interested to know a little more about the type of service-based business, because obviously that's a little more difficult than a scalable product that can go around the world.
Yes.
So I'd want to know, are you talking about direct care business? You're talking about
we'll use the example of say, for example, coaching or virtual assistant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a scalable services business. Again, I think the tenets of whether you're selling a course or you're selling a product or service, if it involves your specific engagement with them, finding where those folks are, who are those ideal clients, and how do you get in front of them? If it's a product, and so the story or the response we gave to Dale, I think really qualifies and applies for a coaching business or a consulting business or what have you. If it doesn't require your physical presence to be there, so much can be done virtually now that I think that's a great way. I've seen a lot of success with companies who use evergreen webinars. So they create a webinar and they promote that to their ideal client, and it's a webinar that then starts a sales funnel It drives them through the sales funnel to different value of items that they can provide. Might be a short course, might be an extended course, etc. Products, that gets a little more difficult because, I would say with physical products, one of the biggest problems that I see with creators of physical products and even service-based businesses in many instances is they create a product or a service that no one wants. And interestingly, of the 90% of startup companies that fail within the first 5 years, about 40% of them fail for that reason. They create a product or a service that no one wants. And when I say no one wants, what I'm really saying is that not enough people will purchase the product or a service at the price point required for it to be a profitable ongoing concern to the founder or the business owner. And so as a result, what they do is they spend all of their money marketing a product for which there's not product market fit. And as a result, they go broke before they're able to get their business off the ground. So one of the things I recommend, and this is borrowed from a number of authors and researchers in the space. Ash Maurya authored the book Running Lean, and Steve Blank, who is sometimes referred to as the father of modern entrepreneurship. What the process that we recommend that's based on those two gentlemen is figuring out what's the problem you're trying to solve. What are the 1 or 2 or 3 major issues that you're trying to solve? Quantifying those problems in terms of the impact that they have on people. So, and that impact can be twofold. The breadth of the impact in terms of the number of people that it impacts, but then also the cost of the impact. What does it cost to people? And is there viability in solving it in a manner? Is there enough money and enough people experiencing the problem that I could create a solution for that people would be willing to pay for? So quantifying the size and the impact of the problem. And then number 2, qualifying the problem by identifying who my target customers are, what's my ideal client profile that experiences this problem to the greatest degree, and as such would most benefit from a solution. And then figuring out a way to get in front of them to actually interview them with a set of unbiased, what we call customer discovery interview questions that doesn't ask them, do you have this problem and would you pay to have it solved? Because people want to say yes, right? People want to give you what you're looking for. So don't give them a clue of what you're looking for. You begin to ask them a series of open-ended questions. And if they don't highlight the issue that you've identified, maybe you're not really on to the right problem yet. And so we like to suggest that you write down your riskiest assumptions about the business you're trying to start or the product or service you're trying to create, and then go get out of the room and go talk to people. Steve Blank says there are no facts inside the building. There are only opinions and assumptions. So get outside the building and go talk to people whom you think would be prime beneficiaries of whatever solution you're creating, and do some customer validation, customer discovery research.
Thank you. So that getting in front of people and asking questions similar to what we might call market research, understanding more about our potential customers and the actual problem that they're facing. Is that matching up to what we think it is? And if it's not, then we're probably off track and we need to focus on what they're experiencing if they're our ideal kind of client.
That's right. And I would tell you that, market research generally, I would say it's kind of market research on steroids, right? So market research generally refers to surveys and online research and data gathering. And while that's great, and I highly recommend you start there, customer discovery is literally about getting in front of customers, ideal customers for your product or service, and asking them, as I said, a series of open-ended questions like, how do you deal with so-and-so? Do you ever experience so-and-so? How do you deal with this? What solutions have you found to be beneficial to you in this regard? What have you found lacking in this regard? And again, I'm not not leading the witness. I'm guarding against creating confirmation bias, and I'm trying to distill out from them, or to tease out from them, without leading them to tell me what I want to hear. I'm trying to guide them to just give me information, and I can see if the information matches up. You know, and that's there's a real art to customer discovery that I would encourage people. You know, there's a new AI generated software tool, Spirit of Full Disclosure. I'm one of the investors in, but it's called Oxygen, AUXIGEN, oxygen.ai, AUXIGEN.ai, that really actually has some of these tools actually built in, where creators of new products, services, or solutions can use AI to help them jumpstart the process. You know, sometimes when we start trying to write down, here are the problems, here's the target audience, and what have you, we get kind of the blank page syndrome, and we draw a blank, right? And so Oxygen can help by creating one of the tools we use called a lean canvas. Number one, it can actually help you to create your customer discovery questions, and identify your ideal client profile and what have you. So I would encourage your listeners to maybe take a look at oxygen.ai. I found it to be very useful, and a number of other folks have as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that'd be a great way for our listeners, myself included, to explore, you know, more about our ideal clients and really asking those discovery-based questions without leading them down a particular path that opens it up for more of unbiased information that we can use. So thank you for that.
Sure thing.
And I'm just popping through. If there's any questions that people have, feel free to add them to the screen. Question for Jeff. What 3 things you know now that but you never knew when you first started out in the business world? That's a great question. Yeah.
Only 3?
We'll start with 3.
Yeah. So, you know, I would say the first thing is just what I explained in terms of, you know, falling in love with my idea or falling in love with my solution versus falling in love with the problem that I'm trying to solve. And that comes directly from Ash Maurya. He says, don't fall in love with your idea, fall in love with the solution. You know, fall in love with the problem. Love the problem, not the solution. Love the problem, not the idea. And so, you know, so many times in my career, I came up with what I thought was a great idea, but spent a lot of time and effort trying to get that idea off the ground, when in reality, it was just flawed from the beginning. And so that's probably number one. Number 2, I would say nobody will run your business like you will run your business. Living in a rural community, I started working, working part-time as a young 11-year-old, 11-year-old, working at a gas station, petrol station. So I would go and pump gas and check oil and clean windshields. And that grew into actually working at a more advanced automotive service center, where I was welding on exhaust systems and mufflers, and changing the oil, doing service jobs and light mechanics by the time I graduated high school. So I purchased that business after I graduated college. The gentleman who had it for 4 decades was going to just close it. And I purchased it in my hometown. Now I live 2.5 hours away from my hometown. So I hired a gentleman to run that business. I was 23, 24 years old, and thought I could just pop down there every few days and check on the business and make sure that everything was okay. And I ended up, as we say in the US, losing my shirt, so to speak. And so I spent the next decade kind of digging out from under the financial burden of losing that business. And so I learned very early on in my career that not everyone will run your business the way that you run your business. And you have to have systems and processes and what have you in place to make sure that if you're going to build an absentee business, there's a very specific way to build that absentee business so that it can be run the way that you would like to run it. And it does require your involvement on the front end. So you go slow on the front end to hopefully go faster on the back end. And so That was something that I learned. What would I tell my 23 or 24-year-old self? As part of my doctoral research, my academic research, when I was a professor at the medical school, that led me out of healthcare into the business world, is I was, as I said, studying the differences in high performers and average performers. And one of the things that I learned there is that success in just about any endeavor, business, career, relationships, what have you, success in just about any endeavor requires a delicate balance between results and relationships. That if I focus on results at the expense of relationships, I will achieve wild success very, very quickly until I alienate everyone who's responsible for helping me maintain those results. If I focus on relationships at the expense of results, people will love me for a period of time until they lose respect for me because I can't deliver results consistently, or I can't do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. And then I lose them both. And in both instances, if I choose one exclusively over the other, I ultimately lose them both. And I am a results person by nature. I have a little bit of both. We all have a little bit of both. But when it hits the fan, so to speak, an aphorism we use here in the U.S. occasionally, when it hits the fan, I tend to migrate toward the results side of the equation. And in doing so, sometimes forget about the relationship aspect. And so what I would tell my 23 or 24-year-old self is, oh, by the way, the reason I picked that is because I still have to tell that to my 58-year-old self, is that I have to build crutches around myself to think about the relationship aspect, making sure that I'm investing in relationships, that I'm not forgetting about relationships, that it's not all about the results. Sometimes we have to go slower on the results side to go faster on the relationship side, and so that's what I would tell myself.
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually a great piece of awareness for each of us around where do we sit, when it comes to results and when it comes to relationships. And when we understand like where we naturally sit or our default, whatever it is, then we can, really open ourselves up to the awareness of like that other side, whether it's results or relationships, and go, yeah, actually that's where I really need to be. And it's, our listeners are really resonating with that. Great advice. You're doing so well for a 5 a.m. start.
Yeah, Cherry's complimenting me on way to go at 5 a.m. So thank you. I appreciate that. Giving me a little moral encouragement here. And a little liquid encouragement too, by the way. So.
It all helps. It all adds up. And Ben would like to know what leadership qualities are most crucial for navigating the challenges of the hospitality industry.
Yeah. So the leadership qualities. So, I go back to the leadership qualities that are critical, irrespective of industry, irrespective of background, in any setting, are these results and relationships. So you have to think about, okay, what are the qualities of each? What are the skills and disciplines of each? Well, there are skills around prioritizing, around setting a clear direction for your people, around making difficult decisions, and the disciplines of how to stay on task and strategy and those kinds of things. Then there's listening and coaching and, providing that direction and correcting mistakes and what have you that kind of tie into the results and relationships. But the other thing that I would say is I have a definition of leadership on my wall over here that I have crafted over the years. And I really use this definition in every aspect of leadership, irrespective of whether you're being an individual contributor or you're being a leader of multiple people. I believe leadership is a set of behaviors. It's not a title or a position. I used to have people who would come to me and they would say, "Hey, I want to be a leader in the organization. Would you help me become a leader?" And I would say, "Yeah, go be one." And they would say, no. What I mean is I want to be a leader like you in the company. And so I said, yeah, then go be one. No, but I said, what you're telling me is you want a title. You want to have a title of leadership. Well, I would say go be a leader, and go be a leader consistently. And when you demonstrate that you have the capability to be a leader consistently, then you're going to get opportunities to have a title to go along with it. And so the definition that I've begged, borrowed, and stolen components from multiple people is this: leadership is the most important requirement for business and personal success. In simple terms, it's defined as the willingness to be held accountable for results and then to deliver on that responsibility no matter what the external circumstances, situations, or pressures. And so early in my career, I'm a former military guy. And so earlier in my career, I used to think that that definition of leadership it really constituted an act of assertion where I, as the leader, have to hold my people accountable. I got to hold them accountable. Excuse me. And so early in my career, I would say that much of my leadership speaking and coaching and training and was really teaching people how to assert themselves as a leader in a way to balance results in relationships. And while there's times that's still important, in my older age, as hopefully I've gotten a little bit wiser, I've come to believe that first and foremost, leadership is an act of submission where someone submits themselves to being held accountable. They willingly submit themselves to being held accountable. And that makes the number of times that they have to assert themselves to hold other people accountable fewer and farther between. So for instance, imagine an organization in which everyone submits themselves to being held accountable. They know what they're responsible for. They're willing to deliver on that. And when they get off track, they submit themselves to being corrected by their teammates, their colleagues, their leaders, and it's a completely different environment in that regard.
Well, thank you. That was really, powerful explanation and application of that. And Wilma said, having a coffee with you, Jeff, LOL. Very
Thanks,
informative.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to share a cup with you, and we'll clink our glasses together there and do a cheers and a bottoms up.
And someone's written here, you are the nicest guy. Thanks for giving us your time this morning, your time. Yeah.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Happy to do it.
And Jane's got a question. Hi, Jeff. Tell us about Innovation Junkie and how you came up with the idea. Is it something you'd like to share over here in Australia? Great question, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it actually started in about 2008 with my partner, my business partner, whose also name is Jeff. So it's easy to remember, Jeff and Jeff. He's actually located about 2.5 hours in the northwest of Arkansas, which if you're familiar with Walmart, yes. Tyson Foods and JB Hunt Transportation, three of the world's largest companies. Actually, their headquarters is in the northwest part of our state, where my partner Jeff Amaran's located, and he started a company in 2008 called Startup Junkie, and Startup Junkie is an entrepreneurial support organization, much like the Conductor. In fact, Startup Junkie and Conductor are a single company focused on providing that entrepreneurial support to existing entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, small business owners, and it's funded by third-party sources to be able to provide that coaching, consulting, and training for free to entrepreneurs. We actually do that in the state of Arkansas. We actually have relationships in Korea where we do that as well. We have relationships in Eastern Europe where we do that as well. And so one of the questions is, would you like to bring that to Australia? The answer is, we'd love to do that. I'd love to speak with potential sponsoring organizations, government entities, large institutions, foundations who have a vested interest in the job creation that comes about from entrepreneurship. And that's the folks with whom we work, and generally the folks that fund our services. By the way, some of the rationale for that: in the United States, 99% of employers, 99% of all employers are small businesses in the United States, not the big publicly listed companies. They represent 1% of employers. The 50% of all employees work for small businesses, and 50% work for those large flagship listed companies. Startup companies are responsible for the vast majority of net new job creation. They create about 65 to 80% of all net new jobs in the United States. And they generally generate 5 jobs on average in their first year in business. And so there's a very much an economic rationale for funding the services of companies like Startup Junkie Conductor. The specific question was, how did Innovation Junkie come along? And I'll tell you that now. So over the years, as we've been doing this work since 2008 in Northwest Arkansas, 2016 with the Conductor in Central Arkansas, we started having multiple larger companies from around the world that don't really qualify for the free funded services of the Startup Junkie Conductor teams coming to us and saying, look, we need the same services. We can pay you for it. And we know we don't qualify for the free services. So in order to keep our business models pure, we created Innovation Junkie as a billable consulting firm to work with those large companies. And oh, by the way, one of the first companies we worked with was a division of Walmart. Another one was a bank held by some of the Walton family. We also worked with Arkansas Children's Hospitals, one of the 5 largest children's hospitals in the country. So those were some of our earliest customers. And so what we do with Innovation Junkie is we're focused on helping organizations and their leaders generate sustained results in the areas of making sure their strategy is on point, making sure that they're disrupting the status quo and they have processes in place to innovate, making sure that they're growing revenues and growing profits sustainably, many times if they have to engage in organizational transformation exercises, which I'm working with a $50 million US company right now to do a complete organizational transformation, helping them with leadership, and what we call organizational effectiveness. And so, yeah, I would love to bring that to Australia. If any of you are in need of either the funded services of the Startup Junkie Conductor, and you have any government entities or large agencies that you would like us to visit with about that, or if you have companies that would be interested in talking with Innovation Junkie, we're happy to talk there as well.
Oh, that sounds like a great opportunity. So for any of our listeners and those catching this podcast episode into the future and you've heard this, then reach out to Jeff and his team and chat about what's possible.
Yeah, and I don't have a copy of it in front of me right at the moment, but I will say, not meaning to shamelessly plug anything, but there is a book out there that can be bought at Amazon called Creating Startup Junkies. Creating Startup Junkies, and the subtitle is Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places. Arkansas's not Silicon Valley. We're not New York. We're not Chicago or Indianapolis or even Austin, Texas. We are a very small state. And so we're an unexpected place to have something as robust as Startup Junkie Conductor being funded by third-party sources. And so what we've chronicled in the book, Creating Startup Junkies, is the 4 pillars, and that any local geography, any large metropolitan area or others can take to actually spur innovation and entrepreneurship within their geographies. Those pillars are talent, the cultivation of entrepreneurial talent, their culture, creating a culture where entrepreneurs can come together, share ideas, much like 11-11 hour, collaborate, share resources and what have you, engagement of local industry, and then access to capital at all stages of venture development. So,
oh, that's great. And Tabitha popped in that she listens to your podcast, and the name of your podcast, Jeff, for those that are hearing it for the first time.
Yeah, the Innovation Junkies podcast.
There you go. So
we also have one called the Startup Junkies podcast. So 2 podcasts. Jeff Amaran, my business partner, is the host of the Startup Junkies podcast, and then he and I co-host the Innovation Junkies podcast. So thank you, Tabitha, for that plug there as well.
So load up on the resources there for those listening. And with regards to Australians entering the US market, we've got some questions with regards to, our marketing. So for those that want to market and connect with US community, are there particular ways that we should be looking at the way we communicate? I mean, we acknowledge that, there's differences in the way that we speak and some terminologies as well. But are there any tips or hacks that you might suggest for an Aussie to be able to stand out and really connect with the American audience that they really do want to expand into and work with.
Yeah, it's been said before that we're two countries separated by the same language. Right. And so, having lived in the UK, there are what we would call colloquial differences that I think are important. If you think about marketing, part of marketing is risk removal or risk management, right? Helping alleviate the risks or the concerns that potential consumers would have. And so everything down to the colloquial spelling of words, I think, is important in your copy. So just to give you an idea of some of the minutia and the detail. So, there are words that we use in common, but we spell them differently. For instance, two that come to mind would be endeavor, where you all would put an extra U in the end of it, and we would not. Endeavour is how it would be spelled in say Australia and the UK, the Queen's English, so to speak.
Yes,
we would just spell it Endeavor without the U. Or organization, where you would use an S and we would use a Z. And so you may think that that's a small thing, and it's not going to prevent people from being able to understand what you're saying, but it will heighten the risk if they're worried about shipping their dollars overseas and the ability to get their product in a reasonable time frame or their service in a reasonable time frame. And so understanding that if you've got copy that is specific to Australia, that you have a copywriter or Grammarly or something that can use the US version of language to recast that before you send that message, populate that website, publish that landing page, send that email or make that social media post or what have you. Just those little things can just slightly increase the potential perceived risk, maybe not actual risk, but perceived risk. And we all know that making purchase decisions is highly perception based.
No, we appreciate that level of detail, because that is very relevant to a lot of our listenership when it comes to putting together a sales page, sending out an email. Like, do we or don't we remove the U for those that are Australian and are used to having it in on the S and popping it in, and to reduce the risk and to really invite US community audience buyers, then it is worth that consideration and that shift. And you can always ask, Chat GPT to do a spelling and grammar check in American English.
Very, very much so. Great idea there, Cherry. And I can't speak enough about Chat GPT. And, I don't believe that the robots and the AI is going to replace us as employees, is going to replace jobs. I believe that people who have mastered the ability to use AI, Chat GPT, and the bots, those people will replace people who don't know how to use it. And I use it every single day and have found it to be phenomenal at taking something that might be a 1 hour task for me of writing copy or doing research for benchmarks or what have you. I have found it being, reducing that from an hour job to probably a 3-minute job, maybe a 10-minute job maximum. If I'm trying to write a series of emails, having Chat GPT write the first draft of that and let me edit it, it's always better. And I mentioned a few moments ago using Oxygen.ai to get past the blank page syndrome. When you're writing anything, it could be a blog post, it could be a social media post, it could be a process or a process or a procedure or a job description. And Cherry's talking about making it a great business assistant. I agree. Delegate some of that initial writing. It's much easier to edit something that's been written than it is to write something from scratch. And so leverage it in that capacity. Deb's saying that she uses Chat GPT as well to write what she wants to say for business and get them to make it more professional and a more professional presentation. So you can use it to start the process, or you can start the process and have it finish the process. And so you can use it on either the front end or the back end. And so Deb, I appreciate you bringing up that approach as well.
Yes, that's a great point, actually. You can use it in the front end or the back end or both. And that's something I've just started implementing myself, depending on what it is, whether it's front end or back end.
Well,
And
there's a couple of can't speak this morning, tips and tricks that I've heard to creating prompts. And one of those is, if you don't hear any of the others, pick this one up, is tell ChatGPT the expert that you want it to be. So for instance, before you pose your question, the more detail that you can give it in terms of what you're trying to say, kind of garbage in, garbage out. So the more detail that you can give it in setting up your prompt, the better. And so if you have a starting document that you can upload, but then you can say, after reviewing this attachment, acting as an expert in blank, then actually put your prompt in, provide me with the following, blah, blah. I did one the other day where I said, acting as an expert in strategy and as an expert in organizational effectiveness of this kind of business, tell me the benchmarks, the common benchmarks that these businesses use to compare themselves against other businesses. What are the benchmarks themselves? What are the definitions of those benchmarks? And then what are low benchmarks, mid-range benchmarks, and high benchmarks, the actual measures of those benchmarks for this particular type of company. And so got it back to me. And I actually also asked it to cite the sources. And so included in the response were little quotation marks. You click on the quotation mark, that would actually take me to the actual website where they pulled that data so that I could use that as a reference in making sure that I could replicate and provide some credibility to the data. And so there's no limit to the things you can ask GPT, but you need to get skilled at writing the prompts and asking it to be the expert that you're wanting it to be.
Thank you. Yeah, writing it as the expert. Question from Alex. Hi, Jeff. What are your thoughts on networking and networking events? Great question, Alex. Yeah, particularly entering the US market.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Alex. I am a firm believer in networks, and to borrow a phrase that's been said before, your network is your net worth. And I remember back when I was a young professor at the medical school. I was 26 years old, had been president of a state society of respiratory therapists, and I remember telling my wife, if something were to happen that I would lose my job, God forbid, I may not be able to replace my income tomorrow, but I could put food on the table for my family because of the network that I had started creating and the fact that I had learned about the concept of networking and network building early in my career. And so I have continued that over the course of my career now, some 30 years later. 32 years later, I guess. And I have never relented in the pursuit of building my network. Hence my conversation with you all today, my opportunity to interact with folks in Australia. I was on a podcast the other day in the UK. I'm going to be on one in Asia very, very soon. And so I'm constantly looking at not just, and here's a real critical point, not just how I can create a network for my own personal gain, because that can be seen through very, very quickly. I am creating a network because it's genuinely a better human thing to do. And I look for the opportunity to add value to that network. And when I need value from that network, I don't hesitate to ask for that value back from that network or some help with something. But I'm constantly focused on giving to that network first and foremost. There's a great book out there by Bob Berg, I believe is his name, who wrote a book called The Go-Giver.
Yes.
About the go-getter, and he wrote a book called The Go-Giver. And it's a simple parable. It's a story about a very powerful business idea. And that is about giving value to people before you ask for anything in return. And I think that concept works very, very well for networking as well.
Yes, you make a great distinction there with regards to it is giving to give rather than giving to get. And when you go in that with that intention, with that focus, like you said, people become aware of it. They pick up on it. They might not be able to articulate it, but they can sense that this person's giving to give rather than giving to get. And when someone does, and I was being guilty of that early on in my networking days, but it's a great learning for people as well, that, yeah, when you make that shift, then your network really does expand, and it becomes more of a net worth. Mm-hmm. With regards to that, not being afraid to, like you said, follow up or circle back round if there's something, but sure, looking at it as a way to give to people and what opportunities you see for them and sharing those.
Yeah, and here's an example of the power of networking, Alex, just to kind of give you an idea. And I heard this example a few years ago. There were two attorneys when the internet first really started coming into play. There were two attorneys that both of whom had the question of some kind of question, a specific technical question about internet privacy and internet law. And one of the attorneys went out to the chat groups and the social media groups, and he posted his question out there. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, he got several dozen, maybe even 100 responses, and he had to filter through those responses, and that took him 2 or 3 other days. And so 3 weeks down the road, he actually ended up providing an answer back to whomever needed the answer. By the same token, this lady who was very much a network contributor, she built her personal network. She was always getting to give versus giving to get, always adding value. Happened to remember that through one of her networking events, she came across an internet legal expert located just a couple of states away. She called his office, and it was during his lunch break, so she got his voicemail. She left him a voicemail, told him that she would like to just pick his brain for one moment. She had a question for him. And because, and so within 20 minutes, he returned the call back to her and gave her the answer. So 3 weeks versus 20 minutes in terms of getting to the same place. And so if you think about, had she not contributed value to him in some shape, form, or fashion, he would not have picked up the phone to call her as soon as he got back into the office. And so just the difference in that concept of networking. Networking's not just being part of a Facebook group or a chat group or what have you. Networking is truly about giving value and being a valuable contributor to that network.
Yes, no, thank you. We appreciate that. And yeah, Cherry just said in the comments, if it wasn't for networking, then we wouldn't be doing this live stream. We wouldn't have an 11 hour, the collaborations and the people that have, come before us in the live stream. So it certainly does help. And off the back of networking and the question Alex asked, do you see that people are becoming more aware of networking and the need for it, or more is it, as we're on social media more, we can get a little bit tunnel vision and not see it? Do you see any sort of
I don't know. There? Yeah, I don't know if people are becoming more aware of it or if the opportunities to do it have just proliferated, right? So Facebook groups, Instagram chat groups, WhatsApp chat groups, the opportunities to Zoom and video capabilities, podcasts, just so many things have happened with technology over the course of the last since 2007, I guess. So would that be the last 15, 18 years or so? So much has happened that it almost has to be a concerted effort not to network. There's so many opportunities you have to be completely oblivious and or lazy and apathetic to not network. The tools that are there today. So I don't know if people are becoming more aware of it or just there's so many opportunities that people are like, okay, well, maybe I'll hop into this group. You think about, nobody asked a question about generating referrals for your business, but that's been said that referrals require 1/15 of the effort compared to a cold call. 1/15 of the effort compared to a cold call. So when someone refers you or recommends you, you automatically jump up the chain in the trust continuum because you're kind of riding on the backs of their credibility. And so, when you look in a lot of these Facebook groups I see that are like local Facebook groups, Ask Conway, which is the city that I'm in, somebody will say, I'm looking for a plumber, or I'm looking for a HVAC specialist, or I'm looking for a new family physician. There are people that it seems as though they're sitting on the ready looking for those questions so that they can recommend someone, right? And then you'll see dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of comments of people recommending their GP or their plumber or their AC aircon contractor or something. And so people are looking to do those kinds of things. And so the reason that they are, I think, is because they have found value from that network for themselves, and they're willing to actually provide that value back. And so there are ways to not asking that we give that we give to get, but there's an opportunity to getting to give where you can do that, and it generates return for you.
Yes, it's something that has helped me locally and more globally as well. Those referrals, recommending people, and definitely encourage people to do that more. And 1111 Hour has got a virtual networking event coming up this month, so a great opportunity to expand on what Jeff has suggested in terms of how to network. But come along as well.
And Cherry and Tabitha both have said it's word of mouth and networking is how they exist today as businesses.
It is. Yes. And for more questions, definitely pop them in before we start to wrap things up. Now, another question that did pop up, and it's probably a very minute kind of detailed question, but for those wanting to enter the US market or about to, would you recommend just charging in US dollars rather than Australian dollars? What are your thoughts around that?
Back to the risk perception of risk, right? It's back to the perception of risk. And, I can't control what's going on in someone's head, but I can try to enter the conversation that's already going on in their head, and knowing that conversation is going to include what are my risks, and one of the more minute things we talked about was making sure that you change the actual spelling of words, but also I think putting it in the local currency, and there are ways to do that with technology today, such that it's not an issue. I pay people on PayPal on occasion that are around the world that work for me, and PayPal does a really good job of letting you put in the American dollars and it actually transferring it automatically or converting it automatically to Philippine or to UK or Australian dollars or what have you. So I absolutely suggest that.
Great, thank you. We each appreciate that. And for any more questions, definitely pop them in. Is there anything that you would like to add to what we've spoken about, what's been asked, Jeff, or expand on? Or anything we've missed?
Top of my head, I know Tabitha just asked, how can the audience find out more about you and what you do, and find out more about you, Jeff? And Deb said some real gems. Thank you, Deb, for that. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. Jeff Standridge, Standridg. You see it there on the screen, Jeff Standridge on LinkedIn. So I'm very active there. Would love to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. InnovationJunkie.com is where you can find me from a business perspective. JeffStandridge.com for my own website. And then you can search on Amazon. I've got 4 books on Amazon. One of which we mentioned, Creating Startup Junkies. And so you can search on author Jeff Standridge. So that's really the key. That's how folks can best get in touch with me. And I'd love to interact and connect with anybody on the show. And yes, I love
a warm welcome to everyone. Invitation.
I love Vegemite. Cherry's asking me. So
you love Vegemite. And you love coffee. So that's a great morning meetup.
For sure. And I want to bring my wife back to Australia. I haven't brought her. I was on a business trip the last time I went, so it's on my list to bring her to I want to do Sydney, Melbourne, and want to do some of the Outback, and so it's on my list. When I do, I'll certainly look you guys up. maybe we can have a coffee and some Vegemite and toast together or something.
That would be great. Yeah. So we'll definitely come and find you on LinkedIn and your website and check out your books that are available for us. So thank you so much, Jeff. We've really loved having you here. Thank you. Yep. And to everyone that's asked questions, we appreciate that and all of your expertise around that, wisdom, time, and talents. And yeah, someone said bring your wife for sure. And you fit right in, Jeff.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.